Hi, everyone, and welcome to Legal Management Talk. We're covering every angle of legal management. I'm your host, Justin Askenazy. So, with technology changing so rapidly all the time, it can be hard to keep up. And certainly, all of us want to make sure we're using the latest and greatest tech to help us do our jobs better. But that can be hard, and especially for the legal industry, the big question is the traditional law firm business structure set up to allow us to maximize that adaptability? And here to give us some answers to that question is Jacob Morvay. He's the president and CEO of Morvay Consulting Group, where he brings his experience in accounting and legal to help law firms with transformation initiatives and program implementations, among other things. So first of all, thanks for being here, Jacob. It's great to have you.
Thanks, Justin. Great to be here.
So let's pick up where I just left off. Am I right in saying that sometimes trying to get technology to best fit your firm can be a lot like fitting a square peg into a round hole?
Yeah, Justin, I think you're absolutely right. And if we think about the history of the profession for a minute, up until recently, we've really used technology as a supplement to what we deliver versus a tool to give us a competitive advantage. And where firms are starting to think differently from a structure perspective is, how do you build a law firm around utilizing technology to be more efficient and to deliver services more effectively versus trying to kind of cram technology into an existing process where it might not create as much value.
Gotcha. So when you're trying to create that value, what are the first things that you should look at as you're assessing what tools that you want to try to start implementing?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first place to look is actually to your people and to your practice, and to evaluate what sort of practices the firm is offering and where technology is disrupting those practices or has the potential to disrupt those practices. For example, there might be a piece of technology out there that lets you effectively run an insurance defense practice. But if that's not a big part of your firm today, that might not be the best place to start. And so I would start internally in saying, what is our strengths from a practice perspective? And then using that knowledge to then determine technology is out there that's going to allow us to continue for those practices to be competitive.
When you look at the usual firm business structure, how does that fit in with kind of the rapid change in technology and trying to be fleet of foot, let's say, when you're looking at the options available?
Yeah, and so the traditional business structure is ironically somewhat built on inefficiency. When we are generating our revenue on an hourly basis, when we add efficiency into that process, we add the cost for the technology, and then we reduce our revenue. And so that is a recipe for disaster. And so to address that, to accommodate that, we need to look at the actual business model itself and look at how can we use technology with different pricing arrangements and different contractual arrangements with our clients to continue to grow firms' profitability. There's lots of different ways that firms are thinking about that, whether that's creating recurring revenue sources over a larger portfolio of clients, or looking at leveraging technology to replace people in certain parts of the process. But all of these require us to look beyond the billable hour and look beyond the compensation systems we have in place that motivate the billable hour being the primary measure of success at a firm.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, I've had a lot of conversations recently regarding changes to the billable hour and, what that looks like from a client service perspective, what that looks like from an employee wellness perspective. And now you add in this, modernization aspect to it too. But it seems to me like, one of the issues is that there's, not much buy-in from the people at the top to try to change that. So what's the, how do you kind of get that buy-in? What's the argument looking at that modernization aspect to then try to affect some change in that compensation model?
Yeah, and I think there's two pieces to that. And so the first piece is that we're not going to ignore the productivity of our timekeepers. So just because we want to move away from billing our clients on an hourly basis doesn't mean we're going to have attorneys stop recording their time so we can understand, how much work are we getting out of them and how productive are they being.
Right.
That being said, the way this sells up the chain is, at the end of the day, the bottom line. If I look at how much I charge for an hour of work and how much I pay for an hour of work, there's a maximum margin there. There's a natural ceiling. And yes, I guess we could always say that people can always work more hours and more hours, but there's a limit to that. Mm-hmm. And so the opportunity is we can make as much or more money than we were previously if we're willing to think holistically about where the opportunities are for those different sorts of fee arrangements. And I think one of the biggest aversions to it, most of the time, firms today are looking at fixed fees or portfolio pricing or collared rates. It's when clients are asking for it. And there's not a competitive strategy to say, this is a business line we could go out to the market with and price it differently to create a competitive advantage. Instead, it's just a reaction to clients saying, can you do this on a fixed fee? Which in and of itself is never going to be to our advantage on a one-off basis. So it's getting leadership to think outside of their past experiences and to think about a future where we're not just proposing fixed fees in response to a client, but we are using them as a strategic tool to grow the firm's client and revenue base by offering a value proposition in the market that an hourly rate does not offer our clients.
Hi there. This episode is brought to you by NetDocuments, the #1 trusted cloud-native and intelligent document management platform used by legal professionals worldwide. NetDocuments empowers law firms, corporate legal departments, and public sector organizations to organize, secure, and collaborate on documents effortlessly, wherever work happens. With built-in knowledge management, powerful automation, and AI tools, NetDocuments turns your document repository into a hub of insight and productivity. Learn more at netdocuments.com and find out how smarter work starts here. So let's turn a little bit back to the technology aspect. And I know that another big motivating factor for firm leaders is look at what our competition is doing, and we should be doing X, Y, and Z to keep pace with them. Besides keeping pace with the technology itself. What have you noticed that firms have started doing to really stay innovative and stay on top of things?
Yeah, the firms that are putting their foot forward into this space are doing a few different things. One is they're investing in innovation teams, and they're bringing in people who are either previously were practicing attorneys or are never were practicing attorneys, whose knowledge base is more about how do we disrupt existing business practices using technology and giving those teams room to fail. And I think that's a really important concept. as an industry, we're very risk adverse. But to determine what technological changes are going to be most successful at any individual firm, you have to try stuff, knowing that not everything is going to work out. And so these teams of people and experts, the time frame that we want them to be working over might be more than a 12-month period. And so thinking a little bit differently about what success looks like there and measuring that success can be really valuable. Another thing firms are doing is they're looking at what barriers they have internally that prevents adoption. And oftentimes that is a culture where individual voices get a lot of say in what firm leadership is doing and deciding from a strategic perspective. And there is a need, a mindset shift, so to speak, to get the partners to appreciate and to talk to them about the longer term value in their firm and their business, and being willing to take on some different sort of risks over those period of time. Third thing that firms are doing is they are investing in technology themselves. There are technology funds that firms have set up. That particular approach can kind of work depending on the strategy. There are some firms that are just doing it as a way to not miss out on the potential earnings of new technology coming out in the field. But there's other firms that are using that to make strategic investments in technology that they have already done the work we were previously talking about and saying, this is where we need to have a solution. And then by being an investor, they have an opportunity to lock in access to technology that others might not have. And if we think about, creating competitive advantages in the legal space, we can't contractually lock down our lawyers to not work at other firms. We can't contractually lock down our partners and to leave. We can't contractually lock down our clients to stay with us. But if we invest in technology that gives us a competitive advantage over our peers, we can create exclusive contracts with technology vendors. And so the firms that are making these investments up front and are having those relationships are going to have the best opportunities to reserve that technology for their firm to give them a competitive advantage over others.
Yeah. And I want to go back to that second point that you made about really giving a voice to all the employees, which to me that also sounds like it can be a good recruiting tool as well, to say, and especially in the hiring market we're in today, to say, hey, you're going to come in, you're going to be new, but we want to hear what innovations what ideas you have and things you can think of. And that's going to help us as a firm focus our approach on what's coming up around the bend, as opposed to, what's here now that we've already been looking at or not looking at, as the case may be.
Yeah. So what changes there, Justin, is that historically firms have looked at the employees they have who are not attorneys as more of a support function and not necessarily directly related to the delivery of legal services. And the people that you're describing, the ones who are going to be part of a firm that are going to help the attorneys deliver services in a way that is efficient and profitable, had different expectations. And for firms to attract those people and to retain them, they have to be ready to embrace them as members of a team, as members of their engagement team. And the firms that do this most successfully are the ones that actually pull these people directly onto engagement teams in the appropriate way. We're not talking about replacing lawyers. We're talking about supplementing skill sets. And whether that be legal project management, whether that be leveraging AI for document review, it's building a culture that embraces the totality of your workforce as part of the success of growing the firm versus one part that is revenue generating and the other part just being a back office expense. Those people that are coming in are career driven and they have the same expectations as lawyers when it comes to professional development, when it comes to coaching and mentoring, when it comes to career opportunities. And so we have to look holistically at the firm's HR function and policies. Have we built a culture where we can attract and retain that talent in the same competitive view that we look at attracting and retaining attorney talent?
Mm-hmm. And as great as once you have that team set up to come up with the ideas and make the case for a certain project or technology, then the team's already built in to then implement the technology and train others and really be the experts on something new.
Exactly. And leveraging them as the experts in that area, and being willing to hear different ideas and approaches from those individuals. The firms that are doing that are the ones that are really starting to pull away from the others in using technology to a competitive advantage. The ones that have embraced that they need to make the same sort of strategic investments in people who are not attorneys as they are as well in the attorneys are the ones that are really starting to see that succeed because they have credentialed professionals helping support them and giving them strategies that their competitors don't have.
Yeah. So just to, give a summary overview here before we wrap up, I guess the bottom line of what I'm hearing you say is that it's so important to have that long-term strategic outlook. And the saying is, short-term pain, long-term gain, that, you make the investment now, like for example, getting rid of the billable hour may hurt profitability in the near term, but long term, when you start looking at all these different aspects and developing your talent and integrating new technologies, that really is the key to keeping yourself competitive as a firm and really focusing on what services that you want to be providing.
That's right, Justin. And it feels rather matter of fact to say it that way. And so then I ask myself, why aren't more firms moving in that direction today? And I think one of the things that they really need to take a hard look at is their partner compensation process and how they are actually motivating their partners. So at the end of the day, you and I can sit here and wax poetic on what we'd like to see change, but we know and we accept that there's partners that own these firms that are ultimately the ones making these decisions. And as long as they have a partner compensation structure in place that is only focused on 12 months of results and is primarily focused on hours being generated or revenue being generated without looking at profitability and margin, and not leaving room in that process for there to be longer term investments and to reward those longer term investments, they're going to be held back. And so it is a very difficult topic for firms to address because it's such a big part of the underlying culture. But it is, I think, one of the biggest things that's holding firms back today, because at the end of the day, the individual partners don't see what's in it for them because their current structure doesn't motivate them to do those things.
Right. It incentivizes inertia, right? And that's a powerful thing. And that's why, a lot of firms are in the position that you're describing today.
Yeah, and to your point, Justin, a little while ago, you were talking about, looking to what others are doing, and so we're not falling behind. As an industry, we have a bad habit of only looking at other law firms. But what we know outside the United States is the disruption that is coming is not going to come from within legal. It's going to come from accounting firms, from technology firms. There's a lot of services that lawyers deliver that you don't actually have to be a barred attorney to do. Mm-hmm. And so that there's a significant risk that disruption will show up. And there are multiple states that are starting to take down the barriers of non-attorney ownership and delivery of these services. And so I would really encourage firms to look broader at the overall threat environment from a competition perspective, not just at law firms, but at anyone else that is out there trying to sell similar services or products that will replace your services. Because wouldn't it be better if that was your own firm doing that instead of ceding that to competition?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And I think that's a good question/action item to leave off on. So hopefully we'll see some progress on this front soon. And until then, thank you for being here and giving us your advice. And hopefully we'll be chatting again sometime soon.
Great. Thank you for having me, Justin. This was great. Appreciate the time.
Of course. Thank you to our listeners and subscribers for tuning in. Please be sure to subscribe on YouTube so that you never miss a video. Give us a like or a comment. And you can catch us wherever else you get your podcasts. And as always, you can learn more about ALA at alanet.org. Until next time.